Steelers, Ravens, obviously the divisional crown still up in play with this one. Some big injuries to note, though, on the Pittsburgh side of the football. George Pickens didn't practice yesterday with that hamstring. TJ Watt limited yesterday with that foot injury he suffered a week ago. If they don't have those two, I mean, you can almost close the book on this one before it starts. Unfortunately, those guys are that important to this Pittsburgh Steelers team. So I think everyone's hoping we get to see them just because of we want to see both teams at their best. But BMAC, what matchups will you be watching in this one?
Well, to your point, you talked about TJ Watt and, being limited today. If he is able to go, clearly, guys, he won't be close to being 100%. It would be some issues with that ankle foot injury that he's dealing with. So the matchup that I'm watching, can the Steelers' defensive front pass rushers be able to be effective against Lamar without TJ being at his best? The thing about Lamar and why he struggled so much against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2-5 is his win-loss record against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A guy who's thrown 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The reason why he struggles is because they have the ability to put relentless pressure on Lamar Jackson, led by the guy you see there in TJ Watt. 17 career sacks against the Ravens, right? In 7 total career games for Lamar Jackson, he's been sacked 22 times when facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's why they've been so dominant against Lamar Jackson. That's why other teams oftentimes struggle against Lamar Jackson, because they don't have the pass rushers that can put outstanding pressure on him for 4 quarters. Pittsburgh have had the ability to do so. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith Jr., Nick Herbig, and then you add Preston Smith into the fold. You're talking about 4 legit pass rushers led by one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League. But if TJ is not the TJ that we've seen in years past against the Baltimore Ravens, can the others step up to the plate and bring in a solo home run? That remains to be seen, because if they're not able to do that, we're going to see MVP like in Lamar Jackson show up. And that's something that we've never seen from Lamar Jackson in his career against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
BMAC, I love that matchup. And obviously, I'm partial to have this protection conversation as an offensive lineman. And when you've got a guy like TJ Watt, it doesn't matter what you throw at him, 1, 2, or 3 dudes, he's going to find a way to get into that vision. And if you can change Lamar's eye line, if you can get him more concerned with the pocket than the progression, you could be looking at a really frustrating day for Lamar Jackson and this offense. So much is predicated on his ability to stay alive with the football, looking down the field, regardless of the chaos going around him. If TJ Watt's on the field, I fully anticipate chaos. But if TJ Watt is out there in a limited capacity, and that's what we're talking about here with that ankle, I fully anticipate this Baltimore Ravens offense to go right at the head of the snake, and that is TJ Watt. And you do so in the run game. You challenge him physically with double teams, triple teams, cut blocks, cross formation, tight ends, getting him to have his head on the swivel, just like I was talking about with Lamar Jackson, B-Mac.
And the big thing about Watt is that he's going up against, I don't want to say the weak link, because Roger Rosengarten's been great actually of late for the Baltimore Ravens, but a rookie nonetheless, a rookie second round pick going up against TJ Watt. It's like, good luck, dude. If you're left on an island at all in that game. And why Watt is so impactful as a rusher is that he is such a tough guy to deal with, because he's that true edge bender, that guy that gets to the top of the pocket. You feel like you're in a good position, but then all of a sudden he can really, the flexibility is lower half. Exactly. He's never out of it and gets to the top of the pocket and then bends it all the way back. So you think you got him, lulls you into this false sense of security, and then all of a sudden he's at the back arm of that quarterback swiping it away. So that's massive if they don't have him, but I do agree with BMAC that the Steelers are uniquely qualified. If there's any team in the NFL that can deal with losing someone like TJ Watt, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because of how impactful Nick Herbig has been in that third edge rusher role, and the fact that they have Preston Smith there as well. So if Watt isn't fully healthy, early downs, I expect it to be Preston Smith, right? I think he's the guy you want as a run defender to match up against all that the Baltimore Ravens have in the running game. And then third downs, Nick Herbig, he still provides that juice, still provides that guy who can really get to the top of the pockets and make those game-changing forced fumbles, to where I still think the Steelers can win it even without TJ Watt. On the other side, though, if they don't have George Pickens, I'm not sure they win this game without George Pickens, just because of how crucial that matchup is for George Pickens against these Ravens defensive backs, and the fact that I'm not sure I trust anyone else on this Pittsburgh Steelers team to consistently win those one-on-ones on the outside. What do you think of that matchup, B-Mac?
And that's the concern. And the thing is, Mike, we saw the lack of playmakers for Pittsburgh become an issue last week against Philadelphia. See, when you're in this time of the season, when you're playing against good on good, usually teams offensively, they have playmakers they can rely on, right? And it's your job to match their playmakers. What we saw last week, the playmakers for Philly showed up. A.J. Brown. Even though you didn't get Saquon-like ball games, he still provided a spark. Devontae, right? When you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers against Philly, they didn't have any playmakers show up. George Pickens has been their best playmaker. And when George Pickens is not on the football field, especially when you're playing against a real high-powered like offense, like they will see this weekend in the Baltimore Ravens, who's next? Like if we had to really sit here and debate outside of George Pickens, who is the next best playmaker for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive side, we would really be in a conundrum on thoughts because we don't know. I mean, maybe the next best player probably would be Jaylen Warren.
That's what I was going to say. I think Warren, but it's like that's your second string running back at this point, sadly.
But that's the difference, though, B-Mac and Mike. You got like Russell Wilson gives George Pickens a chance, and he could come down with the football. With these other playmakers on the offensive side for the Steelers, you have to be damn near perfect as a quarterback. You not only have to make the right read, but you got to put that ball exactly where it's supposed to be, B-Mac. And you understand this better than anybody. You play some guys and you come back to the sideline and your coach says, hey, they get paid too for a reason. And then there's some guys that you play against and your coach gives you a high five and say he never had a chance. Well, with George Pickens, they always have a chance. With these other guys, they got to play this football game out. Russell's got to be pretty damn near perfect.
Yeah, and to your point, it puts more stress on Russell to be almost perfect playing against a high-level playoff caliber defense in the Baltimore Ravens at home. So to your point, that's an issue for me because now we're starting to really see the inability for Pittsburgh to make a splash move like they were trying to do at the wide receiver position surface. Throughout this season, they've been able to get by because, of course, you had GP and everything has been working. But the depth, the lack thereof has always been a concern for me. Even though you traded for Mike Williams, we haven't seen him. We don't know what's going on with his status in terms of being more involved offensively. But outside of that, like Jaylen Warren is probably the next best playmaker. And get this, he is the backup running back to Najee. He's not even a starter. So the opportunities or the lack thereof is an issue for him to show what type of playmaker he could be.
So do we think that Russell Wilson can overcome that? Like, can he create himself a little against this Ravens secondary? Because as much as this Ravens secondary has been maligned, they're still a unit that is willing to put those guys out on an island. And we saw in the Buffalo game, when they have lesser wide receivers they're faced against, they can win those one-on-ones. But it's when they face a Jamar Chase, when they face a George Pickens that they don't adjust well enough, and all of a sudden you see them running wild in that secondary and making big plays down the football field. So if Pickens can't go, can Russell somehow and Arthur Smith, can they cobble together something, whether it's schematically, whether it's Russell himself making plays outside of structure? B-Mac, do we see that as even a possibility, or is it just, man, they're going to have to lean on this run game heavily and have their defense win them one?
I think now that's the thing, Mike, Kyle. How much do you really trust the run game as well? Because they didn't do anything last week against the Eagles. Now, the Eagles collectively, they're a better defensive unit than the Baltimore Ravens. But if you catch Baltimore on the wrong day, that defense can look like a legit competitor given some of the personnel pieces they have. So to answer your question, Mike, I think schematically speaking is the best weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You might want to utilize tempo as well, because when you're short-manned on the offensive end and you're missing some playmakers, the best way to try to help and build confidence for some of the other guys that are filling in is utilizing tempo. And what tempo does is it kind of catches the defense off guard a little bit, especially when you're not anticipating tempo. If you go back to the first meeting against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, Pittsburgh huddle, they did things the normal way. So 9 times out of 10, as game prep for this week, they're preparing for the same thing, but come out with a little different tempo. You know what I mean? No huddle, going fast, trying to jumpstart something that they were not able to prepare for. And maybe that can kind of get you in the right direction a step earlier than doing things the normal strategic way, because they're not, to our point about them not having playmakers, it will surface in a game like this weekend, because guess who Baltimore has? They got at least 3 playmakers: the quarterback, the running back, and if you want to choose either Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers, choose. And think about this too, guys. This is a serious game for Baltimore. They're attacking this game like it's a Super Bowl because of what happened the first meeting and them chasing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And guess what? If you're Baltimore, you're thinking like, yo, if we can take care of our business and come out with a sense of urgency and beat Pittsburgh, guess who Pittsburgh got next week, Christmas? Kansas City. So you can go from a moment of chasing the Pittsburgh Steelers to basically winning the division and guaranteeing yourself a home game. So this is the most critical game for the Baltimore Ravens. So for me, Pittsburgh-wise, you have to match the level of intensity and preparation. So me, knowing that you don't have playmakers like they have on their offense, I got to try to switch up my scheme a little bit, and let's hit them with a little bit of tempo. Russ, go ahead, hit with rhythm throws, kind of get your guys going, and then get the running game going. That would be my philosophy.
Yeah, B-Mac, the rhythm throws, that's where we're going to have to see Russell Wilson really shine. And we alluded to how perfect he's going to have to be with his accuracy, with his timing, and his anticipation. But, Mike, to answer your question, I think that Russell Wilson has done a really good job this year, all things considered, age, all that kind of thing, being mobile in the pocket. Granted, it's not the same Russell Wilson we're used to. His ability to get outside, break, contain, and make plays has been awesome. But the question that remains, are we going to see the floor or some mid-level of the building that the offense is? Because we know what the ceiling is with George Pickens. Throw the football down the field. Without him, it's going to be Russell Wilson scrambling his butt off back there, trying to find a guy, not getting plastered at the second level. And with the way the Ravens defense has come along, I don't think it spells anything successful for the Steelers offense.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I agree with B-Mac's point, though. I think this has to be treated like a playoff game. You are 10-4 right now. Ravens are nipping on your heels at 9-5. It ain't getting any easier after this. And I just don't see how you can get through the wild card in the AFC right now. The top of that conference is too good, going on the road for 3 games to get to the Super Bowl. That home field advantage, at least for 1 game, is going to be so massive for whoever gets it. So, yeah, you have to pull out all the stops in this one if you're Arthur Smith.